We're two not cops, we're just two guys. We used to be cops, now we're just guys. Two not cops.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 50 of The Murder Project. That's right, we made it to episode 50. We're super excited, and that means that we are ready to do part 5 of the Two Not Cops. If you're new to The Murder Project, Two Not Cops is an episode where I sit down with Mike and we discuss stories or events or law that goes in kind of with our law enforcement career. We kind of change it up on a part-to-part basis, and that is what we are going to get into this week. So we are going to keep it short and sweet, and we're going to jump into the episode. So without further ado, Mike Smith in the house.
Hey, buddy.
Back-to-back weeks.
It is.
That's the best thing about Two Not Cops is it's 2 weeks in a row.
That's right. And it's real easy. I imagine at some point we will run out of things to say because we'll have said it all, but that's okay because you know what I'll do? I'll just tell the same story twice.
I'll tell it again in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, one of the things I was thinking about when we got ready to do this episode was I figured at least at this point, at episode 50, we would have had somebody reach out to us and be like, hey, in the next Two Not Cops episode, could you guys cover this?
Right.
Could you talk about whatever? And so if you're listening right now and you have questions about law enforcement, anything that kind of goes the in and outs, maybe something that we didn't cover or something perhaps you heard in an episode that you want us to go into a little deeper, anything like that, anything that you can think of that you might want an explanation, answer, advice, whatever, let us know.
And not just that, you're also free to ask, like, what are our experiences with like certain things? Like, we, obviously we haven't been cops forever. I was only a police officer for a couple of years, but you would be surprised how quickly you encounter just very strange things.
Oh yeah, and we're gonna get into a little bit of that on this episode. And what we're gonna kind of set up on this episode is the last one. If you haven't listened to it, go back and check it out. It was Dude, You're Drunk. This one we're gonna kind of set up as that didn't go very well.
Yeah, that is a good one.
Situations where things didn't go very well, or just something funny that might pop up while we're in the middle of the episode. But if you do have something you want to get to us, make sure and reach out to us. We're we're on all the social medias. I'll let those. I'll give you those at the end of the episode as I usually do. And also contact@themurderproject.com. That's our email. If you want to send us an email and kind of put it in a longer form question, let us know. We also want to thank everybody that got on to any of the platforms and liked the page, left us a review. We've got a few more reviews that we're going to read at the end of this.
That's what I heard. I actually haven't read them yet, so I'll get to hear those
for the first time. We got a few, and thank you guys. Thank you to everybody that's done that, because there's a kind of a metric that I watch on a different website, and our listener score is going up, and it's based off of those reviews, 5-star reviews, actually leaving a comment on the review, and then going on to like Spotify and hitting that 5 stars. Go on to any of those that you can. Please help us out.
Yeah, please do.
Because that kind of gets our listener score up, and it gets us noticed more, and it kind of gets us past those algorithms that we've always talked about.
We're fighting the algorithms.
Yeah, we got to get in there. We got to fight. We're just two average Joes just doing a podcast in my kitchen. Like, let's just do this thing.
We're literally in the kitchen.
Yeah, we're sitting at my dining room table right now.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's go ahead and get into it. So this one, we're going to go over some kind of scenarios, situations where things just did not work very well for someone, or the circumstances were quite strange.
That's right, yeah.
So do you want to start us off on this one, Mike?
I do, yeah. I can think of one that comes to mind. I was in my 3rd year, and we got a call for a vehicle versus a train. Because in Amarillo, there's lots of places where trains run through town.
Yeah, I covered that in the last one where we were talking about the dude that fell asleep at the railroad crossing.
Yeah, and even in the city proper, there's so many, like way more than you would think. And because they don't have a lot of, overpasses, underpasses for that. This city's old enough that the train was, the lifeblood.
Yeah, especially if you're going down like Washington.
Mm-hmm. And actually, that's where it was. It was
Yeah.
45th in Washington. Well, 46th in
Yeah.
Washington. So, of course, we all raced down there thinking it's going to be bad. And another officer got there first, but this feller had gotten just incredibly intoxicated.
No way.
And yeah, he did. And he stopped at the train tracks when the bars came down, but then he passed out. And his foot wasn't on the accelerator. It was just on anything. So he just slowly rolled forward
Just coasted on in there.
while a freight train is going through and just drove into the train while it was going. And the train just kept going and had sawed off probably the first eighth of his BMW.
Nice.
And so he was still going, like the train's still rolling through when I get there. I can just hear the brakes engaging as I'm walking up there, and there was just shards of engine block and radiator. It had just, every car of this train that had gone by was just sawing through. That's so much weight and pressure that even the engine block and the bumper and the radiator of all this car is nothing to it. It's just sawing it off. So there's metal shards everywhere. And that dude was still smooth passed out in his driver's seat.
Never woke up.
No, the other officer opened the car door and turned it off. And he did not wake up. He was still knocked out.
You're just sitting in there, just taking him a little snooze, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I was walking up and
Sometimes you just got to sleep it off. This is the best way to kind of help you get sobered up.
And
just take you a little nap.
Oh man, I could smell this guy from 15 feet away with just his driver door open. And I'm walking up and I'm just looking up this damage and I'm like, what the heck? Of course, there's just smoke and steam just billowing out of this engine. But I will say one thing. Even after that train had started sawbones in its way through this, the BMW did not stop running.
That's crazy. That's what I was kind of wondering that whenever you were talking about it going through the motor and doing all this stuff, and then the officer turning the key off, I was like, the car was still running?
Yeah, it was. That's what he said. And I was like, holy cow, how hard did he hit it? He said he didn't.
He just coasted into it.
He just coasted into it. And I guess when he made the initial bump, his foot was like lightly started pushing the accelerator. And so it just was barely more than an idle pushing into this freight train as it went by. Not enough to go under a car, of course. You know, it's real low to the ground right there. But yeah, it sawed off that dude never woke up. Of course, after I figured out everybody was okay, we kind of chuckled about it and we're like, man, insurance is probably not going to cover this. I mean, they more than likely did.
I mean, there's some sort of something there that they can get, but boy, yeah, that kind of puts you in a bad spot as far as your story goes, like how you explain that to your insurance company. They're like, okay, what happened? Because we got the police report, and it looks like you were hammered drunk and you crashed into a train.
And then went to jail for DUI.
Yeah, he's like, nah, the train swerved and hit me. They're like, it's not possible to do that.
There's no way, yeah.
He's like, no, it did. That's what it did.
And I'll definitely say, boy, that didn't work out.
Yeah.
Because he could have just called for a ride. I don't think Uber was really a thing then.
Now, most of my stories none of my stories will have Uber in them because Uber might have been a thing in the bigger cities at this time, but it definitely never made it here.
Yeah.
I mean, it's here now, but it definitely was not here then.
There's just, all there was here at the time was phone a friend or a shady taxi service.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you just call you a taxi service to come by in a beat up vehicle that looked very suspicious, and maybe you didn't even know if it was a taxi. I took a couple of them in my day, and especially on those the nights where we do the Rumplements. But oh man, I just almost threw up just thinking about it. But I will say that, I mean, they were there and they worked. It just wasn't the best. I guess it was the best we had. But that reminds me of a story that's kind of similar. It involves train tracks, and I guess this first part of it can almost be a Dude, You're Drunk part 2, and also it didn't work out because this guy is also on Washington, just a little further down.
Yeah,
and it's close to, let's see, it would be Washington and like Farmers. And if you're from here, I'm sure you know what we're talking about. If you're not, you could look it up and have a point of reference.
Yeah.
But that'll make it fun for storytelling time.
Google Maps.
Yeah, get them Google Maps and go to Washington and Farmers. And this guy is heading east on Farmers. He's coming up to Washington. Now, just before you get to Washington, there's like a 6-track railroad crossing. It's huge. Like you drive over it, your whole vehicle is going over railroad tracks for a couple of seconds. It's not just like the one bumping over.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
like you're driving over multiples. It's got a huge railroad crossing. There was not a train coming at the time, but this guy's driving and he's like, oh, I'm going to go up. I'm going to turn left back to the north on Washington. Only problem is he didn't quite get to Washington. He was just a little bit shy and he turned left on the railroad tracks.
Mhm.
And at the crossing, of course, everything's sort of level. You can drive on it.
Mhm.
As you get away from the crossing and you're actually driving on the railroad tracks, it drops down a solid 8 inches, at least 10 inches. And this guy starts driving. He realizes that he's on the railroad tracks. So, like any normal person would do, any responsible person, he went ahead and stopped. He backed up and he got himself kind of off the track. Wrong. He just kept driving straight.
On the railroad tracks.
He never stopped. He was like, boy, I don't know how much. I don't know if he was thinking to himself, like, maybe I'll get to the next one,
Oh, Lord.
which is a ways down.
Yeah, it is.
But as that thick gravel rock,
Oh, yeah.
whatever that hardscape is that they have on the railroad track, as he's going, it's starting to slip, and the distance between his vehicle and the actual railroad track is
Mhm.
getting greater.
Yeah.
So he high centers on the railroad tracks, and he's stuck there
Mhm.
in this box van.
Wow.
And we get a call from the railroad company, and they're like, hey, they called into our dispatch, and they're like, hey, we just had a train go by on one of the tracks. They said there's a van sitting on the track, and we have an inbound train. We've stopped the inbound train. We need to know because BNSF, Burlington Northern Santa Fe
That's right.
Railroad, they have their own police department. So they dispatch them, but obviously we're going to get there quicker.
Mm-hmm.
So they dispatch us and they say, can you go verify that there is indeed a van sitting on the railroad tracks?
Wow.
And so we pull up to the intersection and we're like, we don't see anybody. I don't see any vehicles. I don't see anybody. It looks clear to me. And the dispatcher's like, be advised. The train conductor says it's approximately 200 yards north. And I was like, what?
How?
How did that happen?
Right.
How did something like this happen? So I take the little side road down and I'm driving down, me and another guy. And sure enough, we get up there, we're spotlighting, boom, we see the van sitting on the railroad tracks. And now we realize we're like, oh, it's not crossed over the railroad tracks. It's literally driving down the railroad tracks. Like I thought it was one of those cool little trucks with the little, what are they? The
little tracks that
little
come
tracks
down.
out there. Yeah, they come
Yeah.
down so you can drive. He did not have those.
No.
This vehicle was not equipped with those. So he was stuck. The van was still running. The van was still in drive. So the back tire, I noticed,
Had
was
an idle just turning.
was just spinning. And I get out and I look and I'm like, why? What is happening? And I go and I look at the passenger side of the vehicle. That back tire is also, well, that back tire is not, but it's blown out.
Right.
One of the tires on there was where like he was like really getting into it
Mm-hmm.
and it blew the tire out,
Just friction burned and popped.
which put him in a worse situation because
yeah.
now the back of the vehicle, the axle is just sitting on the railroad track. Like he's going
Goodness.
nowhere.
Holy cow.
So I tell him, I'm like, yep, there is a vehicle on the railroad track. Go ahead and stop, stop the vehicle or stop the trains. And I shine my flashlight over there and I'm like, is there anybody in here? And the guy, I'm like, hey, open the door. The guy opens the door, beer can, tall boy falls out. I'm like, bingo. Here, well, we just solved all that right here.
Holy cow.
We figured it out. So long story short, we walk up there. I'm talking to the guy. I'm like, hey, man, where are you coming from? And he's coming from the strip club, the same one that I referenced in the Dr. Sonier episode that I was sitting down from. And he was there for a while, and then he got him a 6-pack of tall boys, and he was on his way home, got lost, ended up out in the county, drove around for a little ways, ended up finding his way kind of back into town, and then realized kind of where he was.
Yeah.
So then he started shooting for Washington so he could cut back down and go home. Missed that, drove onto the railroad tracks.
Goodness.
And I mean, he was in, if I forgot to point this out earlier, he was in his company vehicle.
Oh no.
Yeah, he was still in. So he got off work at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon,
Mm-hmm.
went to the dollar store, hung out there until closing time,
Holy cow.
or somewhere around there. Had the 6-pack in his vehicle, or maybe he left before then and he was just driving around just aimlessly
Mm-hmm.
in the night, cracking cold ones. Just doing a little booze cruise
Yeah, some
Um,
road sodas.
in an unsafe manner.
It's safe to assume.
And so
That was implied mostly.
yeah, and so we get him out of the vehicle and we're like, hey, we got him out, but we don't know how we're going to get the vehicle out of here.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we ended up having to do is after that, they had a priority 1 train that was stopped on the next track over.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, hey, we're going to go ahead and send it.
Yeah.
We cannot hold this. If it's not on that track, it may make contact when it's going by, but that's just a risk we're going to have to take. I'm
Holy
like,
cow.
well, there's no one in the vehicle.
Right.
So they sent it. And it was, when that train went by, it was so close. It was like you couldn't even put a slip of paper
Holy.
between the train and the van, but they didn't touch. And we ended up having to get a big rig wrecker, the 18-wheeler wrecker
Yeah.
with the winch and all the,
And the boom on it.
to come out there. And they just drug that thing off of the tracks all the way up the embankment to the side. And then we had a flatbed tow truck come out and actually load it up. So when they got that thing off the tracks and up on top of the embankment, the whole van was just trashed. And this was a company van. So the guy that I was with was the primary on the call. So he took the guy to jail. And then the next day, one of the booking officers called me, and his boss had called up to the jail. And they're like, hey, we hadn't heard from this guy this morning, but we did hear a rumor that he was arrested last night.
Yep.
And they're like, yeah, he is in custody still this morning. And he's like, do we have any idea what happened to his van? And he's like, boy, do I got a story for you.
Oh, no kidding. Safe to assume he was no longer employed.
No, he was the guy on the phone actually was like, well, will you let him know that he's terminated? And he's like, no, but you can let him know later on whenever he gets out.
Yeah, I can't do that.
So that was my train track story for this
man.
episode.
It's great. Now that we're talking about it, I'm thinking of a whole bunch more, but I'm not going to stick on trains, even though there's some pretty funny ones.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But another one that comes to mind of, boy, that didn't work out was I was in my second year and not too far up Georgia Street from I-40 by Julian.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, Georgia and Julian. There's a little house that's right there on the street. It's a business now, but we got a call for a guy that was going through a hard time, and now he was trying to do a suicide by cop.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so he keeps calling the police department and trying to say that he's having an emergency and he needs police officers there. But if they show up, he's going to hurt him. So me and my partner get there.
You're in a double bad situation because he's like, I need help, but if you send help, I'm going to have my help kill me.
Yeah, that's exactly what he was getting at. And even though it sounds counterintuitive, they are going to send police.
Yeah, still
just
going
to gauge it. So me and my partner get there because we were riding 2-man at the time. Here in Amarillo, more often than not, police officers do not ride 2 in a car. It's 1 in a car to try to deal with call volume. Safety concern? Sure. But still, the stats don't lie. It does get more done over the course of like a 24-hour shift.
Yep. That's where if you ever listen to police scanners or you hear everything, like if they dispatch somebody to a call and then they go to dispatch the backup officer and then the officer says like 638, I'll advise.
Mhm.
I'll advise mean don't send the other guy. Let me go check it out. Obviously, there's certain calls that you go to where that's not going to be an option.
Mm-hmm.
Family violence, anything that seems like it's going to be suspicious. But if somebody's, depending on the call, they may say, hey, I'll advise.
Right.
And there's certain situations where you can get away with that. And we also did not ride 2-man at my department. We're all in our own vehicles.
Mm-hmm. But I was with a guy this night. So we get up there, we park down the block and we walk up there, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And we're keeping an eye on it. But all his door's shut, his blinds are and curtains are drawn. So we're like, okay, he's in there. And so we go up there and I'm like, all right, here's the deal. We're going to stand on either side of the door and we're going to knock on it and try to talk to him, which of course, when we did, he didn't answer right away. He talked through the door and he kept saying, who is it? And we're like, it's the police, it's the Amarillo Police Department, man. Why don't you open up the door and come talk to us? And I don't really remember what he said. He wasn't quite yelling. It's like he was not far inside the door and he's just talking. But I remember all of a sudden, the door whips open. Right about the time me and my partner are talking, I'm like, all right, man, if it goes crazy, like I'll go lethal, you go taser.
Mm-hmm.
That way, if he is armed, no matter with what, we can respond accordingly. And the door whips open, and this dude ain't real big, maybe 5'7" and he sure enough has like a folding pocket knife out.
Yep.
So I yell knife, and I draw my pistol, and right about the time I go to aim it at him, my partner at the time charges through the door like a football player and tackles into this dude so hard he drives him straight back across, which would be like the common room of this dwelling, into the drywall. And I mean into it.
Yeah, like all the way through it.
Yeah, he goes between the studs.
Like somebody's going to have to come out and do some paint and putty on this one.
Mm-hmm. So this guy grabs onto him, but at the same time, he tries to put out his arm to stop him. Well, it's his knife arm. And the pocket knife he's in sticks in the wall, like the tip of it. And it sticks in and it lingers there for a second. Well, now they're full on like fighting. And my partner's trying to get him to the ground. And so I go in there and I holster up as I'm walking in the door. And I just grab them both and I pick them up. For those at home, I'm not a little guy. So I just grab them both and I try to take them both to the ground because they're both tangled up now.
Yep.
I don't know what else to do. And this dude gets dumped so hard because not only is it the weight of himself falling, it's also this other guy and me like pulling them to the ground. So we all crash to the ground and this dude bonks his little nugget very hard. And this is a house that has concrete floors, but it has like that thin classroom carpet over it.
Oh, yeah.
And he's like, "Badow!" And he goes down hard. So we immediately grab his arms to control him. He's not flailing much, but he's kind of resisting.
Mm-hmm.
But he's already just way outgunned and not with a pistol.
Yep.
And we get him in handcuffs. And then he does the whole, "What happened?
Yeah.
Why did you do that? I don't know what's going on." And we're like, "You answered the door with a knife. We were talking like you knew it was us." And I'm not going to go, I don't remember a whole lot more than that. He did eventually get the help he needed. I can't recall if he went to the PAV or not that night.
Yeah,
But-
the old pavilion that we've referenced in other episodes.
Yeah. Where they take people that are having a, mental distress.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll never forget that because we made a plan, albeit very quickly before the door flew open. This dude jerked the door open.
Yeah.
It surprised us both because it's dark out and he don't have a porch light. So it's just a lit living room. So we're like, whoa. And then I see he whips the door open and he's got the door handle in one hand and just a pocket knife in the other one. And it's not like he was going to open the door and stab us. He definitely didn't have time to, but he had it back, like cocked, like he was maybe going to threaten to. And I'll just never forget that because we had just made this little plan to go taser and pistol, depending on what happened. Instead, he just full back the bejesus out of that guy.
Yeah, just straight into the ground. And that's one of those kind of situations you get into where you may have a plan that you want to kind of execute. And then as soon as you get to the door or to the location, the whole plan falls apart and you have to go a different route. Maybe like in this situation, it was hands-on. But that's kind of one of those split-second decisions you have to make where when it's all said and done, you're like, boy, I didn't see it going that way. And the purpose was not to hurt the guy.
Mm-hmm.
It was just to kind of get him under control and to kind of get this situation more specifically under control, get this guy the help he needs. But sometimes it can go way crazy.
So if his plan was to, stab a couple of cops or one or whatever his plan was before he got in trouble or before he got shot. Maybe that was his plan all along because that's, of course, what he was broadcasting to the dispatcher. But boy, that didn't work out. Instead, he got some significant living room damage and had a huge rug burn on his forehead.
Yeah, renter's insurance probably isn't going to cover that.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, I had a guy. So I was driving down the road one night. I get to a stoplight and there's a convenience store that's over on to my right. It's through the stoplight, kind of sitting back off the road. And I'm sitting there, I'm driving back out into the county. I'm actually in the city limits of Amarillo at this time, but I'm driving back out to the county and I'm sitting at the stoplight and it's just a summer day. It's late. It's, 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. And sitting at this stoplight, I'm looking over at the Toot and Totem and I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, man, maybe I could pull in there and get me a drink or something since I'm right here. And as I'm looking at the store, I just see this body inside moving very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Hits the door, turns to the right. And then at this time, I notice I'm like, the dude's got a couple of 30 packs in his hand,
Mm-hmm.
30 packs of brewskis. And he runs out the store, goes around the side of the building and into a waiting vehicle. As soon as he gets into the waiting vehicle, it speeds off very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm thinking to myself,
BWRUN.
yeah, beer run.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we got us a beer run here, boys. And I just witnessed it. And I was like, wow, either that or this convenience store clerk just sold somebody alcohol
And they were
past hours.
and they're very excited.
And they were very excited about it. So they pull out, they take off down the side road. I go ahead and turn my lights and siren on because I'm going to burn the light. And it's 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, so it's not a busy time. So, but in order for me to go through the light, our policy was you had to have lights and sirens on. So I turn my lights and sirens on. I burn the light. I get up behind them. They pull over down the street, and I walk up, and I'm like, what's going on, fellas? And they're like, oh, nothing. Nervous.
Oh, yeah.
The passenger's like sweating profusely because it's a summer night, and his adrenaline's probably just
I'm sure, yeah.
just pulsing. And I'm like, what's going on, fellas? And they're like, nothing much. I'm like, well, the reason I pulled you over is looks like you guys did a beer run back there investigating a potential theft situation.
Mhm.
And they're like, oh, no, not us. We didn't do a beer run back there. And I was like, no? And they're like, no, we paid for this beer. And I'm like, it's after hours. They can't sell beer at this time. And he's like, I don't know what happened. The guy sold me the beer. And I'm like, funny. You guys got your receipt with you? He's like, nah, I didn't get a receipt.
Classic, yeah.
And I was like, why were you running when you left the store? Why were you running? And he was like, we got to get back to this party that we're going to.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, oh yeah, it's a lot of excitement there. You guys both of y'all are 21, right? And they're like, you can buy beer, right? And they're like, the driver's like, yeah, I'm 21. Passenger, silent.
Mm-hmm.
The guy who came out of the store with the beer, I'm like, and you too, fella, how about you? And he's like 19 or 20.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, man, so we have a clerk that not only sold you alcohol after hours, but sold it to a minor. And somehow this transaction took place not at the cash register, but at the back of the store
Mm-hmm.
where I saw you running from. And he's like, man, I'm like, we can settle this up just real simple.
Mm-hmm.
We can just go back to the store and we can ask him. And the guy's like, I stole it. I'm like, isn't it just a lot easier
Yeah.
if we can just go ahead and do this up front? And maybe there was a chance that they thought we could get away. I got an idea. He's like, let me talk. Okay. I can explain this, but it did not work out.
No,
Did not work out very well at all. And
not at all.
the store did want to press charges against him, but at the time, I think that the 30 packs in this store were like, now people are probably like, but at the time, I think they were like $18 or something like that, $20 a piece.
Golden days.
The golden days, yeah. And so the total transaction ended up being under $50. So I did write the kid a ticket,
Mm-hmm.
and there was nothing else kind of in play. Like the driver wasn't
Hammered, yeah.
intoxicated, like that. Like they probably were at a party, and someone was like, "We can't get beer because it's too late."
Mm-hmm.
And someone's like, "Hey, what if we talk Jeffrey into doing a beer run? Mark, you drive him."
Yeah, it would be legendary.
Yeah, it would be so cool if you did that. Like everybody would think that you were so awesome. And he's like,
Say no more, fam.
say no more. I am en route.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that one did not work out very well at all.
No, I think of another one. This was at the Buffalo Wild Wings. This is a story that all my buddies have heard me tell a bajillion times, but
Yeah, I had a story there for
Yeah.
one of them.
you do, yeah. But this one is we get a call for an assault and a guy and like a criminal mischief
Mm-hmm.
is what it would technically be called.
Damaged property inside.
Disturbance of the peace, yeah, damaged property. And so I show up there, and they my partner beats me there. So we're both in our own vehicles, but he beats me there, and there is probably this 300-pound not just wide, but also very tall. Just a big dude. He's already in handcuffs. And he's kind of just laying on the ground. And I could just a crowd of people around him. And I'm pushing people out of the way. I'm like, let me get in there. Let me get in there. I don't know what's going on. It's so loud in there. This is late at night. So everybody's, watching sports. They're already several drinks in. So it's a hoot and holler in there.
It's so loud in there.
So I push my way in there. My partner's just standing over this dude who's just laying there, just a little sweaty. And then we asked what's going on. And this guy was playing big, like buck hunter.
Oh, yeah.
And he'd been drinking by himself all night. And I guess the game did not cooperate. And so he started thrashing the machine.
He's like, I know I hit that buck.
Mm-hmm.
I know I did. Maybe he was in the elk hunt. He's like, I know I hit that elk.
That is difficult. Because
Yeah.
them
You got to shoot them multiple times.
and them cows, they'll run in front of the bucks.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The bulls,
And then penalty.
That's right. Could end the game right there.
Yeah.
Well, maybe that would have happened. I have no idea, but he got real mad. And so
He was down to his last quarters.
devastated. With them beer prices, he probably was.
No kidding.
So he thrashes the machine. The manager comes over and tells him he needs to get out. So he pushes the manager. That's where the assault comes in. But when my partner got there, he just sat the guy down and put him in handcuffs. But this is where things don't start going very well.
I was waiting for the twist.
Mm-hmm. So while this guy is already in custody, he starts going ape. He starts kicking and thrashing, and he's not little.
Yeah.
And so we're like, we need to get you out of here, man. Like, we need to go. And the manager's like, can you please take him out of here? He's under arrest, right? And we're like, yeah.
Like, we got to drag this big fella out of
That's
here.
right. Yeah. So he's not cooperating with us. So he's not helping us, like, trying to walk or anything. But every time we try to grab him, he starts, like, thrashing. And so then there's a side door where, like, the to-go orders go out on the side of the building. And it's all glass panes. And we start taking him through there. And he's got cowboy boots on. Duh.
Mm-hmm.
And he starts kicking at him. Like, it's obvious. His foot is coming 1.5 feet off the ground, and he's just kicking at the glass windows. They don't break, luckily, which would have been fine, I guess, because he just would have got an extra charge for that, for the value of it. But he starts thrashing and kicking, and now he's like trying to headbutt us, and he's like, he will not, also not helping us walk. So we have to pick him up by like his arm, which is cuffed behind his back, and his pant leg, and pick him up. And he's a big old unit. And the closer we get to the door, the more he starts thrashing. Now he's just drunk and kind of being a butt face.
Yep.
That's all that's going on. I have another word for it, but we're trying to keep it clean.
Yeah.
And I've about had it with this guy already. And I'm like, and I even remember looking at my partner, I'm like, how'd you get him in cuffs? He's like, he was fine.
Yeah.
He was fine a second ago. But
He had a little time to marinate.
yeah, so this actually is a phenomenon that happens all the time. I call them cuff guys
Yeah.
because they're not tough till they're in cuffs.
Oh, yeah.
They're the guys that once you have them in handcuffs, that's when all the smack talking starts. That's when all the thrashing and kicking and spitting and trying to be nasty comes in. But before that, everything was as cordial as you can be between somebody about to get arrested and a police officer.
Yep.
But he starts kicking and then he starts trying to roll away, and we drag him out there, and I'm like, pull the car up. I'll just hold on to him. And so the more we try to get him into the car, the more he starts like trying to attack us.
I can only imagine this was just a terrible situation to be in.
And he's huge.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
of his size. Like, I was thinking to myself, like, it's hard to get someone who's not cooperating into a car, and then you add on the size of this man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So to make the situation much better, as we're getting him in the car, he's kicking at us and hits us multiple times. He hacks a giant loogie and spits it at the guy I'm with, my partner that I'm with. He barely dodges in time.
Oh,
I'm talking
yucky.
a big old drinking all night. Now I'm heavy breathing loogie,
Yeah.
and he barely ducks out of the way. That's assault on a peace officer.
Mhm.
That's assault on anybody, really. You can't spit on people, folks. It's gross and it's mean.
Please don't do it.
So while this is happening and we are stuffing him it's basically like if a can of biscuits broke and you try to put the biscuits back.
You can't get the biscuits back in there
But we're trying.
once it's popped.
I'm about to origami this wide body into this car, and we both are. We're sweating getting him in there because and of course, to finish what I was saying, to make matters the most worse, his parents somehow arrive.
Good deal.
This is a 24-year-old man. 24.
Yep.
His parents show up and they start screaming bloody murder about how we don't understand. He's having
a bad day.
No, he didn't say he had a bad day. They say that he's having a seizure. No. He just has a seizure. He has them all the time. And we're like,
This is very different.
no, ma'am. No, sir. This is not a seizure. He is physically resisting us and kicking at us. And they are adamant. And not only that, but they are crawling like all up in our business.
Yeah.
So we're trying to stuff this dude in here. And we're doing a great job despite that unit trying to not. But his parents are like crawling at us and they're like, he's just a boy. He's having a seizure. He has them all the time. I'm like, no way, ma'am. There's no way he's having a seizure. Look,
This is
he's
the exact opposite of a seizure.
He's got his chin tucked up like to his chest so he can see out the door. And he is throwing him big old cowboy boots at our faces while we are trying to fold him into this car.
Got these size 14s just coming right at your face.
Exactly. And they're like, it's a seizure. You don't understand. So you know what? We do the right thing anyway. We call the paramedics. They arrive. It takes them less than a minute. They walk over. This paramedic gets out. They both walk over. They're gloving up. They're thinking they're going to do some life-saving, maybe some diagnosing. They take one look at this dude and they're like, he ain't having a seizure because he's in there heavy breathing.
What
eyes.
a shock.
Yeah, I know. Stunning. His parents still in complete denial. And this is a 24-year-old. And somehow the first thing he decided to do when he got kicked out of Buffalo Wild Wings was call his parents. And I could see why he'd probably gotten away with that type of behavior before because he's acting like a child.
Yeah, very
Anyway.
much acting like a child.
I'll go ahead and wrap that up. But that is definitely didn't work out for him because he got billed for everything he broke and tried to break inside the store and assault on a peace officer.
Yeah, that's just the kind of the cherry on top there. I got kind of I wasn't planning on going to this one next, but as soon as you started telling that story, that's a great thing about this is it starts just gets the old memory going.
It does too.
We had a couple of guys one time. There's a convenience store outside of town, and it's another kind of like a beer run story, but the store is closed down.
Mm-hmm.
This kind of goes on the criminal mischief side where it's like, boy, this isn't going to work out well for you. So we get an alarm call at this convenience store, and it's surprising that 99% of alarm calls are false alarms.
They are, yeah.
So we get sent on alarm calls, especially if you worked anywhere close to the midnights shift.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you're on a shift that kind of crossed over, like you guys were on a split shift or whatever. Like when I worked on midnights, we'd get alarm calls all the time. And they were always not actual alarm calls. It was somebody left a door unlocked or whatever. So we get an alarm call at this convenience store and we're like, we'll go over and check it out.
Mm-hmm.
So I pull up in the parking lot. As soon as I get there, I can see that the front, the double doors in the front.
Yeah.
One of them, the glass is broken out of it.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, well, this is legit. And so I don't pull all the way up to the store and kind of back away. I'm going to wait for a backup officer. You're not going to go just mill around and see, in case they're still there. So I'll wait for my backup officer to get there. He gets there. We start walking around. It's lit enough inside the store so we can see. And it looks like there is nobody in the store. Next to the door, there's a display of beer,
Mm-hmm.
a beer display. And there is a busted 18-pack on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
And we're like, no shot. Somebody broke in here just to steal some 18 packs?
Yeah.
Well, that's exactly what it was. So the owner of the store lives close by. So he comes up there. He's got access to the in-store cameras, the CCTV, and he pulls it up. And sure enough, you see these two guys. They park like right next to the store. And we couldn't see the license plate,
Mm-hmm.
but we saw the truck. They get out. One of the guys is carrying a shovel. And he uses the shovel to bust the glass out. They both go into the store. They both grab an 18-pack each. One of them tries to get a third,
Mm-hmm.
but drops it. That's the one that's left. They go back out under the glass, walk back over to the truck, get in and take off.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I cannot believe this. And the guy's like, well, what are we going to do about this property damage? I mean, someone's got to pay for this. And I was like, well, unfortunately, that someone's probably going to be you.
Yeah.
Because, I mean,
There's no suspect in custody.
yeah, I don't have anybody in custody. I don't even know who these guys are. I mean, could we put it out on the news or
Yeah.
have something like this? Sure. There's always different things you can do. But I walk out of the store and we're looking around. The guy that comes, he's like, hey, I'll get some photos. If you want to get witness statements, we'll do all that. I'm like, yeah, cool. And so he starts taking photos, and I walk out the door, and I'm walking over there, and I was like, if they were just going to do this right here, I wonder why they would have parked the vehicle so close, like on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of cruise over there, and I look on the ground, and guess what's sitting on the ground? Dude's wallet.
No way.
Dropped it right. And I was like, now this could be a huge coincidence
Sure.
that there's just a wallet sitting here. But if I open this thing up and it looks like a 20-something year, yep, that's the guy right there.
No
I go
way.
back in, I was like, hey, I found his wallet. And the store owner's like, no chance. I'm like, I can't believe it.
Yeah.
Like, things like this don't happen very often. But the dude dropped his wallet. And so they ended up getting, I obviously I booked the wallet in, you know, they were able to match his picture from his,
Yeah.
they were able to figure it out. And that guy kind of got, but that was one of those deals where it's like, let's go in here and do a beer run. And they pull up and they're like, the store's closed. He's like, I got a shovel in my truck. We
Right.
can just break the glass out and go in there and get some beers. And this ends up costing him no telling how much money.
Yeah.
And I can't remember what he ended up getting, because obviously we did the report. There was no on-view arrest.
Mm-hmm.
The warrant was handled by a detective where the value of the property was determined, and then the warrant would reflect the value.
Yeah.
Whatever. I don't remember that exactly, but that same store, so that kid got arrested, but that same store, just like a year later, we get an alarm call on it. And I'm like, this better not be like these kids or someone they told or whatever. That time we get there, and the doors to the convenience store are pulled off
Holy smokes.
and laying in the parking lot.
They just hooked on and jerked him off?
Yep. Then, and then they went,
Oh, jeez.
got him. So
Gah.
then they did jerk him right off.
Mm,
And
devastating.
yep. And then they went right around the corner, used that same chain with the loop on it,
Mm-hmm.
hooked it around an ATM machine,
No way.
jerked it right out of the floor, got the ATM machine, threw it in the back of the truck, drove off. We called the company that had the GPS location for the ATM.
Mm-hmm.
We found the ATM machine between Amarillo and Hereford, laying out on the side of a county road, empty.
Dang.
They knew exactly where the box was. They knew exactly like how to take it apart, how to do what, like they got the money out of it, and they left the shell of the ATM with the GPS in it sitting on the side of the road.
I know this may be a surprise to some people. You could probably find how to do that on YouTube.
Probably so.
Yeah.
And they ended up, these guys, I believe they ended up getting caught. I can't remember. But these guys hit like 4 different convenience stores all out in the county,
Mm-hmm.
so that, obviously the store's closed, number 1. Number 2, low traffic area, and then no one's going to be there. They hit 3 or 4.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to say that they got caught, but I can't. I wasn't gonna. That wasn't my original story. I don't remember all the details of it, but I remember that same convenience store just not even a year later. It's
Right.
like boom, the guy comes in, and I'm like, "Hey man, how's it going?" And he's like, "Golly," I'm like, "Yeah, it's hard times, man."
Then they were probably professionals.
Yeah, the guys that were still in the ATM. That's the thing you got to think about. Number 1, those cash boxes are extremely hard to get out.
Yeah, they are.
Most people don't even know where they are.
Mm-hmm.
You would think that because you get the cash out, in that kind of middle area where the deal is, it's like spits the money out.
Mhm.
You're like, oh, it's actually further down than that.
Yeah.
I learned a lot about it whenever, we're kind of doing that. But these guys knew exactly where to hit it. They knew exactly where the cash was, and they knew what part to leave behind so that we didn't find them. So that they weren't like at their house. Like this is some movie where you just got some guys like disassembling an ATM in their garage, and the cops walk up and they're like, "Hey man,
Yeah.
what you guys doing?
What you
That
got?
ATM machine over there? We was looking for one of those."
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't feel like this episode would be complete unless I involved a boy that didn't work out where it happened to me.
All right.
So early on,
Oh, this is an actual story about you that
about
didn't
me.
work out.
That's right. Yeah. So it was a middle of the night, probably midnight 1 a.m. They're looking for this guy. He's got warrants. He runs. He absolutely thrashes the West Side in this full-size Tahoe, like a 90s model, big
Oh,
old
yeah.
square body. with the maybe it wasn't a Tahoe. I think it was a Yukon.
Yeah.
It was like a Suburban. And he drives through chain link fences. It wraps around the axle. So now he's dragging about 40 feet of stretched out chain link and fence posts. It blows out his tires. He bails on foot. So it's like chaos.
Mm-hmm.
They're calling every available unit. I was on the west side at the time, still very new, maybe not even a year in. And he starts calling out an address where now they're on foot and they're running. And I pull up and he says the address and I'm like, holy smokes, that's one, like I'm in the alley. They're right on the street next to me. So they jump out and it's like, he just ran into this house. It's right here. And I look down over my shoulder as I'm getting out of my car and I count houses. And so I'm like, he's going to be right in here. So it's not every house on the west side of Emerald is real nice, but they do have these little gems. And this one had a 6-foot privacy fence. And that doesn't sound very high because I'm 5'10".
Yep.
So I'm a young buck. I'm like, I'm going to fly over this fence. I'm going to catch this fool. So sure enough, I run up towards the fence and I jump. I grab the top and I just put my foot on one of the posts that are running horizontal and I just boing right over the fence. I land in the back. Perfectly manicured green backyard. Nobody there.
Nice.
And so I'm like, oh, I'm in the wrong house, right? So I run over to the gate, padlocked. This is a 6-foot privacy fence with all of the slats.
Oh, now they're on the other side.
They're on the outside. And I quickly realize that I am stuck.
Yep.
I can't get out. I have I can't jump and pull myself in all my gear over a 6-foot privacy fence. This fence is taller than me.
Yep.
And I'm like, oh no, what am I going to do?
I'm stuck.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not a call you want to make on the radio.
Nope. I was
razzed about that for a while.
you're a new cop. You get razzed about everything.
Yeah, anything and everything.
Everything, right. And so I'm like, man, what am I going to do? And I'm panicking because I am either going to break through this person's gate, obviously not a very cool thing to do because it's padlocked. Because I remember grabbing it, it clinks, and I look through and I could see the backyard light just shining on this perfectly silver master lock. I was like, oh no. And so I knock on the back door, and this very friendly older Asian couple who are up and awake, front door wide open, looking through the screen door, watching all this chaos and full. There's red and blue lights everywhere. And cops running all over trying to find where this guy went. And I knock on the door and they look at me like I am crazy. And I'm like,
I'm stuck.
I said, I jumped into the wrong backyard. I'm very sorry. And I just walked through their little house.
Oh, they let you in through the house.
They did. And I just walked through their house. I walk out the screen door and I just join in with everybody else. And they eventually get that dude. I was a house and a half off.
Oh.
And he sure enough ran into this person's house and tried to hide in their dwelling while they were awake. Like, of course they woke up. This dude come bursting through their front door. But yeah, not a lot of people know about that, but I'm not that shy. And that's a true story. I jumped that fence thinking I was about to land on this fool. No, I just got stuck in the back of these very nice people's backyard and had to knock on their door to let me out.
Speaking of being in the wrong house, I think this is a perfect time to tell a story about mine and your personal lives off duty.
Oh no.
Yeah, where I mean this almost didn't work out well for me.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I guess it's a good time.
It is funny.
And so this is back when Mike and I first started hanging out with each other. And he didn't live that far away from me. But
not really, no.
No, during so we're hanging out and we're like, oh man, it's you know what I could go for? Some corn dogs.
Mm-hmm.
And I left your house. I drove up, got me some corn dogs, came back to your house, walked in the front door, and I'm looking around and I'm like, why are all the lights off in the house?
Mm-hmm.
I was just here 5 minutes ago.
Yeah.
And a couple of us were hanging out. It was on one of our days off, and I was like, this is very strange. So I open up the door to your garage and I look out there, nobody there, pitch black. So I called you.
Yeah, I remember.
And I'm like, hey, what are you doing? And when I called you, I could hear people talking in the background. And I'm like, what are y'all doing? And you're like,
waiting
nothing.
on you.
And I was like, where'd y'all go? I'm like, nothing, nowhere.
Yep.
We're at my house.
Standing in my dining room.
And I'm standing there and I'm looking around and like all of a sudden the realization like hits me,
Mm-hmm.
where I was like, oh dear Lord,
Mm-hmm.
I am in the wrong house.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not at the right place. I am literally in a stranger's house right now. I just walked in through their front door that was open and unlocked. And I'm just in there walking around, not being quiet, opening doors to different parts of this house, looking around. And then I made a telephone call from inside the kitchen,
Talking at full volume.
talking at full volume because I'm upset.
Yeah.
I thought you guys left and went somewhere,
Right.
and then didn't tell me.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, hey, where you guys at? And you're like, in my house. And then I look, and it's like the laser focus comes in, and I'm starting to look at details of the
Yep.
house, and I'm like, I'm at the wrong place.
Oh,
and
no.
I immediately, I'm like, oh gosh, because I imagine on one of those doors, on the other side of one of those doors, there's somebody probably there waiting for me
Yeah.
with a firearm.
Yep.
And luckily I didn't. So I'm like, I remember I'm on the phone. I just hang up the phone. All of a sudden I need to be very quiet.
Mm-hmm.
And I just like quickly get to the front door. Like as quickly and quietly as I can.
Mm-hmm.
Exit the front door, go to my truck, start it up. I'm 1 block off.
Oh, Jesus.
I was 1 block off. Like I just turned onto the wrong street and I was 1 block off. And I was like, boy, I walked in. I was like, boy, that could have went really bad.
Yeah, and in that neighborhood, all them corner lots are the same. They look the exact same. All them houses in the corner lots.
And that's still, I remember the next time I went over there, I was looking at it and I was like, I mean, I could see where maybe
And the door was unlocked.
door's unlocked. I just bebop in. I'm like, hey, what's going?
Now, I'm not saying that makes that makes it okay. I'm just saying, man, circumstances, they all just lined up for that to happen.
Yeah.
And that poor dude is probably back there, and he's like, "Don't worry, Ethel. If he comes through, I'm gonna give him both barrels of the scatter gun. They ain't gonna take you."
Taking
Then you start making the phone call, and they're like, "Wait,
this guy. I don't think he's here to rob us.
no, I don't think he's here to rob us. I think he's lost." And she's like, "I don't know.
He's not lost. He's calling his friends.
I don't know, Harold."
Get him.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he went. Luckily, nothing happened on that one. But yeah, it's just the front door. It was just like one of those weird things that happens where you hear stories about things like that happening, and then someone unfortunately dying
Yeah.
or something bad happening. Whereas I could have been. That did not work out very well for me.
No.
Well, it did in a way that I did not get injured.
Yeah. Or get the cops on you.
Or get the cops called on me because I was waiting for that one too. I was waiting for the cops, but nothing ever happened, and it was a very strange kind of turn of events.
It is, yeah.
And do you have another one?
No, I was gonna save them. I don't want to give them all out there because the more we talk about these things, the more they kind of come back to because it's been some years.
Yeah,
But it does really happen, and you don't want to talk about the things that you think are really cool because you don't want to come off as sounding too much like a dope.
Yeah,
But there are, I have lots of stories I could talk about of all the shenanigans that come with being a law enforcement officer. Some of them are funny, some of them are gratuitously violent, and you just kind of wait and see. You don't want to get them all out there. You want to save some gems for later. So
yeah,
that's what we're talking about in the beginning, man. We want to know what people want to hear about. We're not cops currently. That's why we're the two not cops, but we do. Amarillo is not exactly like a super peaceful, quiet town. There's people get up to a lot of rough business around here, and even if you're a newer police officer, you find yourself in it very quickly, especially when you're on evenings or on midnights or on what once existed here called tax shift.
Yeah.
Fourth shift.
Yep. And I've got stories from inside the jail that would surprise you.
Oh, goodness.
I have so many things that happened inside there that changed my life,
Oh, I'm sure.
my outlook on life, my thoughts about the average person and what kind of things that go where you're just like,
It's an entirely different culture.
it really is.
It really is. It establishes its own pecking order. You got your own rules, and it's got its own way to break those rules just in order to say, got him.
Yep. Yeah, there was an escape while I worked there. There was a lot of violent people, murderers that were in there. One of the people that escaped was a murderer. One of the times that he tried to escape before he was successful, his escape plan was not so successful by way of one of my friends that used to work at the jail went in as this inmate, another inmate, were beating an officer.
Oh man.
With the intentions of kind of taking him hostage.
Mm-hmm.
And he ran through the door and just one hitter quitter, just knocked him smooth out. And
had it coming.
Yeah, he had that one coming. But and that's, I mean, I think you're right. When I'd rather have a kind of a baseline of what people want us to talk about versus kind of us just getting in here and freestyling. We have a lot of stories, no doubt, but we'd like to know what you guys want to hear, what you guys want us to talk about, what we can kind of bring to the table with the experiences that we've had that are different from the average person. I mean, one of the reasons why I think a lot of people listen to the podcast is that I'm finding out, obviously, is because we bring a different aspect to the podcast game. It's two former beat cops,
right.
Street guys.
Just a couple of street guys.
Yeah, not attorneys.
Mm-mm.
Not just street guys.
Yep, that's all it was.
So if anybody has anything that they want to let us know about or want us to talk about, or just let us know. And, especially if there's certain cases you want to cover. And normally when we do the regular episodes, we try to be as objective as we can.
Mm-hmm.
We try to look, stay down the middle. That's kind of our motto as we look at it. And I noticed that, there's been a few cases that we've done where I think that the listeners have had a slightly different opinion on it.
Sure.
and one of those more specifically, I think, was the Melissa Lucio case.
Mm-hmm.
And we did that. And, it's crazy because I thought to myself, like, we didn't say that she was an innocent person.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't say, we said a lot of things in there, but we were just trying to look at it from the viewpoint of, does capital murder and the death penalty fit for the charges that they gave her? And we're kind of going that, but we lost on Apple. We lost 10% of our listener base.
Wow.
Just off of doing that episode. But we gained so many more people by doing that episode that it outweighed the losses tenfold, which is nice. But it's one of those things where when I say that to be like, hey, what are some things that you guys want to hear? There's more people coming into and listening to the show. So we'd like to do that.
Yeah,
we'd like
absolutely.
to bring up stories.
Yeah, we want to know, what do people want to hear about? What kind of questions do you have? Not just about cases, but also about police work in general. Give us an example. Hey, this happened. Does this make sense to you? Why did, this guy came after this guy with his fists? Why did he draw his pistol? And things like anything like that. Any question, hey, I had a guy, he got pulled over. He didn't do anything suspicious, but he still went to jail for paraphernalia. How's that work?
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
Yeah. Anything like that, because that would give us an opportunity to kind of explain use of force. It would give us an opportunity to kind of go through these things where it's not just like, okay, today, guys, we're going to talk about use of force.
Yeah.
What we're going to talk about, I don't want it to be a class. I want it to kind of be just a kind of an interactive deal where we can say, oh, well, because of this, if you use the use of force continuum, you're going to go one step above. This is what, yada, 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 and we get there.
And it gives us a chance to dredge up all these old stories of, and they're not all make us look cool. I mean, I got a bunch where I just totally beefed it.
Yeah. Yeah, as we grow the show a little bit more, and maybe as we get more comfortable in the kind of dealing out personal details of our life, I can tell you there's been a lot of situations I got myself in where I was like, whoop, I didn't do that right, or maybe I could have done something different, or man, I wish I wouldn't have ate at Waffle House before I went to this domestic violence call, and now my guts are hurting so bad. And you just the situations that come out in that. So
you would be surprised how often you could be investigating a crime and have to be like,
you're like,
I'm really sorry.
My guts hurt.
Can I use your restroom?
They're just be like, is it number 1 or number 2? And you're like, hey, don't ask questions you don't want the answer to.
That's right. That's right. You got Febreze? Because all I got on here is pepper spray.
Yeah, I don't have anything in here I can help you out with. And they're like, oh Lord, maybe not. And we do. And speaking of questions or comments, we had one person that reached out to us on Instagram, and she said that, talking in reference to the Jessica Johnson case, and she was saying that in her opinion that it looked like there were pressure marks on the wrist that's what kind of gave the injury, pressure marks possibly from rocks,
Mm-hmm.
And then she says, my theory is that maybe she passed out and someone strangled her, putting pressure on her hand/arm with her knee/lower leg, and possibly strangled her. This would cause a pressure puncture, with the wounds having similar depths. If she fell, the injuries would not appear to be the same depth. This also would account for the bruising on the outer wrist bone. If they found bruising on the neck, it may have been thought, on the neck, they may have thought to be caused by the shoestrings, just a thought. So it's kind of like maybe a situation where she fell down, somebody applied pressure and then used that pressure and that force with the shoelaces, maybe.
Maybe. Wow, that's really good. And that's the first time somebody's reached us with something like that, like their own opinion. That's cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Like that's one of those deals. Like when we're talking about the Jessica Johnson case, which was just the last one, that when you get into those and the theories, like that is not something that, obviously talking about the bruising on the left arm, talking about the puncture marks on the left arm, talking about how she got those bruises and those puncture marks, and maybe tying that all together as if that would also kind of tie into what we were talking about being maybe close by the area where she was later discovered, or she was killed in a different location by that like using the leg or the foot to gain that leverage, and then going back and fixing her to that post. That's the kind of stuff we're talking about. Like bring it up, and then, we can talk about it. That's a very interesting theory, and one that we had not considered during the episode, in which case, that would explain some of the bruising and marks on her body, and how the puncture wounds all seem like they came from the same area, or they were the same depths.
Yeah, and we also got some new reviews. Did you want to talk about those in this episode?
Yeah, man, let's go ahead and do them. We got 3 new reviews.
I can't wait.
On Apple. I just want to let you guys know, as I mentioned in the beginning of the podcast, these help us out so much as far as the listener rating goes. This is kind of how they determine that listener rating. So please get on there. If you're still listening, jump on there right now and check it out. So the first one that we got on the list is a name that I'm pretty sure they just typed in, because does not seem like anything to me that is a real name, but thank you so much for this. It says, great format, easy listening, 5 stars. These guys got me through packing and a cross-country move. So first things first, thank you. I really like the format of getting straight to the facts and then a discussion. The crime junkie type vibe was getting a little old for me. So this is an awesome change of pace. 2 dudes who are easy to listen to and don't have all the other nonsense. That's a good one.
That is a good one. Thank you very much, whoever that is.
Yeah, check that name out. That's a name that, that's not.
Oh,
that's
man.
just like,
there's
the name. But yeah, thank you. And thank you so much for realizing that that's exactly what we were looking for when we're looking at the formats of the other podcasts. Saying like, okay, we don't want to come out with another one that it sounds exactly like everything everybody else is doing.
Want to sound apart. Plus, I mean, we listen to a lot of them, and the one thing we don't like is people getting lost in the jibber jabber, and then by the time they get back onto the case, you're like, wait, where did we leave off?
Yeah, what happened?
I forgot what you were talking about.
I was listening to you guys talk for 15 minutes about eating a salad, and now I can't remember where we are.
Right, yeah.
No specific podcast there, just saying in general. There's probably a podcast out there somewhere where they did do that, and they're like, these guys are trash talking.
Yeah.
Anyways, so on the next one, this one's going to be from Amira 512. It says, obsessed, 5 stars. I love this podcast. I started listening to the Melissa Lucio case and have been obsessed ever since. They are so thorough and explain the cases. So keep up the great work, guys. Fellow Texan.
All right.
So thank you. And that's another thing. I'm glad you put in there what case you started listening on, because that lets me kind of know where people, and that kind of references back to what I was saying earlier, where we picked up a lot of listeners on that case, but we also lost a lot. And we're trying to do our best at staying middle of the road. And sometimes we give you our opinion, especially when it's like just plain and simple, like this dude killed this person, like the Richard
Yeah, McCroskey.
Yeah, Richard McCroskey.
Little dick.
Yeah, that one was easy. That was easy to say. This dude's a scumbag.
Mm-hmm.
He's in prison for the rest of his life. Fantastic.
Yep.
You know, some of the other ones, they're harder to judge, especially with us not having all the facts and details. So for us, we'd like to stay kind of middle of the road.
Mm-hmm.
And last but not least, this is from Reba, but not that Reba.
Nice.
So not Reba McEntire. So
dang it.
Here's your one chance. Fancy.
Mm-hmm.
Don't let me down.
Don't let me down.
Yeah, glad I found you. 5 stars. I was looking for a podcast that provided a straightforward discussion on the Melissa Lucio case when I stumbled across The Murder Project. I love your podcast. I always start with the oldest to newest episodes, so I'm currently listening to the Melissa Beavers debrief. I think that Missy Beavers is that case.
Mm-hmm.
And I almost fell out of my chair this morning laughing when you said a tree branch went up your nose and you were talking to Jesus in this lady's backyard. I sincerely needed you all in my life.
Mm-hmm.
That was a good one. Yeah. So what's funny is that when this actual review came through, I was out mowing,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember exactly what she's talking about. I remember this podcast that we did on Missy Beavers,
Mm-hmm.
and where I was walking in the back of somebody's backyard mowing, and I went to duck under this tree, and a tree branch went straight up through my nose, through my right nostril, and touched my brain.
Yeah.
And I thought I was going to die in this person's backyard. So
that is the worst.
yeah, so that's the 3 we have for this week. And there were several people that hit the 5 stars. They didn't leave they didn't write a review, but they did hit the 5 stars. We appreciate that as well.
Yes, thank you all the same. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so we're going to go ahead and end it for this episode of the Two Not Cops. And please let us know what you want to look forward to in the future. If you guys want to make these a little more interesting and it's not just me and Mike kind of rambling on about stories that we've had, which we'll do. We like the Two Not Cops deals because it gives us a break. It gives us a break between looking into these cases that are usually disturbing and kind of diving into the details and getting kind of caught up into that. Every 10 episodes gives us a chance to not have to do that for one of them.
Yeah, it's nice.
So we enjoy doing it, but if we had your input, we would definitely like that a lot more as far as the Two Not Cops episodes go.
Yeah, for sure.
So make sure and reach out to us if you want to do that. But I think for this episode, we're going to go ahead and close it out. So we will talk to you guys next time. Goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you guys so much for tuning in and listening to this episode of The Murder Project. Our numbers are going up, our downloads are going up, and we have you guys to thank for that. If you're looking for us on any of the social media platforms, you can find us on Facebook. We are at The Murder Project. If you need to search for us, you can type in facebook.com/podcasttmp. If you're looking for us on Instagram, you can find us at The Murder Project. And if you're looking for us on Twitter, we are at The Murder Pod. Also, don't forget, go on whatever platform you're listening on, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button if they haven't. If you're listening on Spotify, go ahead and tap that 5 stars. If you're listening on Apple Podcast, hit that 5 stars, and also make sure and leave us a review. It helps us out so much, as mentioned, and we always appreciate it. If you have any longer form questions or comments, we have an email address. It's contact@themurderproject.com. And as always, Mike or myself will get back to you. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening to this episode. We look forward to speaking to you in the future. But before we go, please remember,
Head up, eyes up.
and stay alive.